Hi, everybody. Today's lesson is going to be broken up into two segments. If you're looking at your syllabus for week 10, again, we are 1 week behind due to the extended spring break. So what I want to do is talk about two concepts today from the syllabus that I kind of feel are extremely important, especially for people who are going to be going into any sort of elementary music, along with some other ideas where you might have to be approached about teaching a guitar class as an elective, or you might have a guitarist who might be entering specifically your jazz band where you're going to have to be able to approach and show them a few techniques that they may not be familiar with. The first topic that we're going to talk about is the very top part of the syllabus for today. Again, kind of reviewing what we were looking at prior to the spring break, where we're looking at really kind of developing our right hand for finger picking technique. As you guys noted on your midterm tests, our left hand is one, 2, 3, and 4, whereas our right hand is going to be P, I, M, and A. Again, our pinky is really never utilized when doing finger picking. So what I would like you to do is in your books, these are exercises that we're going to find on page 84 and 85. If you have an older copy of the book, if you have a digital version that is an older version of the book that we've been using, these exercises are slightly a little bit different. So what I would encourage you to do is to contact a friend who might have these pages and just ask them to take a photo. We are going to be looking at exercises 4 and 5 from page 84, and then also exercise 7 from page 85. When you're finger picking, a lot of the times when you're looking at a piece of music as if you're looking at exercise number 4. Exercise number 4, even if you have the older book, is actually the same one. So if you have that, you can look at that one. Exercise 5 and exercise 7 are slightly different. So when you're looking at an exercise like number 4, you have 3 chords that you're going through as finger picking technique. You have A minor, you have D minor, you have E7, and also A minor as well. For exercise number 4, what you are doing is you are only working with your I, your M, and your A. When you are picking with your I, your M, and your A, and as you can kind of see from the 2 different angles I have from the video here, when you're finger picking, what I'm always encouraging is that you're asking your students and asking yourself to kind of close your hand down as if you are making a fist. Looking at it as also when you're closing with your thumb should come to the side as if you are doing kind of like the sign language letter A. I encourage that because when a lot of people start to finger pick for the first time, and a lot of the students that I had in my high school method course would do is that they would kind of do it like this, where they're kind of bringing their fingers inward like this versus kind of closing their hand, closing their fist off like this. It's just our natural thing to kind of pull away from the guitar, and I always called it the jellyfish because it looked like a jellyfish going like this. And what's going to happen is that a lot of times your hand's going to pull away, which is going to make the difficulty of putting your hand back onto the strings where they need to be. It's going to be a lot harder. So with exercise 4, you are going to be using the I on the G, the B, your middle finger, the M on the B, and with your ring finger, which is the A, you're going to be on the high E string. So I, M, and A. And again, so this exercise is basically you just kind of finger picking these 3 strings and doing it all together. So I and A all together. And again, what you're trying to do is just close your hand this way and not this way. You should not pull out this way. It's going to give you the best sound. It's going to resonate the most with the chords. So when I'm doing an exercise like exercise 4, if you're looking at even exercise 5, if you notice, they're not necessarily having you finger pick the entire chord. What I recommend, and I believe I talked about prior to the spring break, was the idea that you want to make sure that you're still putting the full open chord together. So even though you're doing A, C, and E for your A minor chord, a lot of the times, as we know from our guitar test, the A minor actually has that E, which is located on the D string. I encourage always when finger picking to make the entire chord, just in case your hand slips up and your fingers go to a different chord. If you're accompanying your kids one day, if you're in general music class and you're doing something where you're performing, or if you're in a concert and you have to perform on a guitar, the worst thing you can do is to not put all the fingers down so that you're making, you're just really trying to remove any errors as much as possible. So in exercise 4, again, with your A minor, your D minor, and your E7, you're technically only using that first finger. But again, I would encourage having your middle finger on this B string, even though you won't finger pick it. Again, just kind of as a safety precaution, you don't want to, you want to make as less errors as possible. So to demonstrate this exercise for you. So when doing these exercises, it's going to be difficult at first to try and put down the full chord, even though it's going to be a lot easier to just put down the fingers that you need, rightfully so. However, what I would encourage is that as you're doing these exercises, life will be so much easier in the long run if you're just trying to put all of your fingers down. For exercise 5, what you're doing now is you're just adding the bass note with your thumb. Remember that when we talked about finger picking, traditionally your 6, 5, and 4 strings, your low E, your A, and your D, are going to be done with your thumb. So here's exercise 5. Again, when I'm closing my hand off, bringing my fist together. Cool. So that one's not too bad. Again, it's basically what you were just doing in exercise 4, but you're adding the bass notes, slight, kind of just like your root going to a chord as well. These are all really great finger picking patterns that if you're in general music and you want to kind of give yourself a little bit of movement, again, you can kind of do this idea of like a root, chord, root, chord, root, chord, root, chord, that kind of idea. So when you're looking at something like exercise number 7, you're starting to work independently with your fingers, which is going to be kind of tough because you're kind of bringing them in. And again, you're not going to always be able to completely make a fist. So it's the idea that you're trying to initially, with these first couple of exercises, have the students develop the idea of bringing your hand this way rather than this way. So again, it's not always going to be ending up a fist, just because you might have to be constantly moving this right hand. So in this exercise, notice that with exercise 7, you're now going to have slightly different chords. So you're going from an A minor and a D minor and an E7 to now an A major, a D major, and an E major. In a lot of your classes, you may not necessarily have students who are going to go into classical guitar. And I'm trying to kind of stay away from a lot of the true classical guitar techniques because it's not something that you may run into as a music educator. But these are really great finger picking techniques that the students can utilize. A lot of high school students, including myself when I was in high school, didn't really know how to finger pick correctly. So it made my initial tries at finger picking a lot harder. So the second topic that we're going to talk about today is looking at the idea of bar chords. Bar chords spelled B-A-R-R-E. Bar chords, if you look in the syllabus, are going to be basically one of the main topics that we talk about from now until the end of the semester. Reason being that honestly, it's probably going to take us that much time to really develop and get a sense of how to put bar chords together. Bar chords are a really great tool. And as a guitar player, I'd like to think that learning how to play bar chords is the equivalent of learning how to play over the break or how to teach playing over the break on the clarinet. It's a concept that's going to take patience, a lot of exercises, moments of frustration, but when you get it, very much like playing over the break You know, it's something that you are able to do, and there's not many issues after that point, which is really nice. The idea of bar chords is that, as you knew from your, as we talked about on your midterm exam, there are a lot of what we call open chords. Open chords meaning that it's a combination of notes that you're pressing down with your fingers on the strings and on the frets, but there's also some strings that are going to be played open, meaning we're just going to ring out, you know, E, A, D, G, or B. Chords like G chord, A minor chord, C chord are all what we call open chords. Now, unfortunately, not every chord that we can muster up, whether it's major, minor, and then going into any chords that are extensions like 7s, 9, 11, 13s, which you might experience a guitar player coming into a jazz band situation and being presented with those. Unfortunately, again, not every chord is something that you can muster up into an open chord. So this is where bar chords really are very effective. And what bar chords are is that you're taking one finger and placing it over more than one string. So one of the ones that we talked about initially was the idea of the F chord. The F chord, and I'm using my second camera here to be a little bit closer to the fretboard so that you guys can see, is that the F chord is developed by taking your first finger, playing it over the two frets, this C and this F, taking your middle finger and then taking your ring finger to create the chord. We worked on that slightly in class, and I know it's something that probably some of us were able to get really well, and some of us, you know, this is brand new. So today what we're going to look at is not just something that is a 4-string, but looking at it, how we can apply a bar across all 6 strings. So when we're looking at bar chords initially, the idea of a bar chord is basically taking almost any open chord that we know and creating a capo with our first finger. Now, for those of you that aren't too familiar with guitar stuff, a capo can be something like this, a device that basically clips on to your guitar, and it allows you to play open strings higher up on the neck. So I can play an E chord up here, but it's going to sound like an A chord. I can play a C chord here, but it's going to sound like an F chord. So it allows guitar players a lot of the times to play simple open chords, but not having to really think about changing the key. So the idea of bar chords, there's 2 main ones that we're going to talk about this semester that are ones that you can kind of work on with students, or again, if you have a guitar player in your jazz ensemble, this is the way to start. In the comments, or not, excuse me, not in the comments below, but in the description of the video below, I have a Google Drive link that's going to send you to these handouts that I've added. So if you'd like to pull those up so you can kind of look at them as we're talking here. Here is 3 pages. 2 of them are from the most updated version of the book, and then a 3rd page is one that I also added in just because it's a handout that I use with a lot of my students. So this information here, if you can take a look, you're going to see that this is, let's see here, this is, okay, here is Unit 4. Again, this is from the more current edition of the book. So there are 2 types of bar chords. Ones that you find using various types of E chords, and then there's ones that are using various types of A chords. The ones that we're going to start talking about first for this week and the following week are looking at ones that are based off of the E chords that we know. So the first thing that I would do is to get familiar and make sure that you really know, if you take a look here at these 4 chords, the E chord, the E major chord, the E7 chord, the E minor chord, and the E minor 7 chord. What's going to happen next is that if you look at these chord charts here, this E chord, this E7 chord, the E minor chord, and the E minor 7, all of the fingerings that you had for this are slightly different. Meaning that with the E chord, you were normally doing 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and your first finger on the first fret of the G. If you noticed, they're switching all of the fingerings because your first finger needs to be open to basically serve as that bar, to serve as that capo. So if you take a look at your E chord now, you have third finger where your middle finger was, you have your pinky where your ring finger was, and your second finger is now serving where your first finger was. Again, to free up that first finger to be utilized for your bar. So what you're going to see is you're going to take your E chord with this new fingering shape. And basically what you're doing now is sliding the whole chord up, which sounds pretty cool. Sounds pretty Spanish. Anyways. And what you're going to do, and if you want to kind of look more at the screen closer to my hand, is basically, here are your fingers playing the E chord. You slide it all up one fret, trying to keep all of that spacing. Don't move your middle finger down a fret this way. Keep the spacing exact. And what you're going to do is to lay the first finger over the whole first fret. So this is going to pose a challenge because if you're not used to doing bar chords, this is something that is extremely difficult to do when you're first learning. And most of the strings, when you strum the chord and then you pick out each one individually, you're going to hear a lot of clunks, more than you're going to hear a lot of ringing out notes, which is common, and it's just something that's going to happen for at least the first week or two. The nice thing about trying these on a classical guitar is that when you're pressing down the strings, they're going to be slightly easier. It's not going to be as harsh feeling as trying to put them down on, like, let's say, like an acoustic guitar with steel strings. The other, the downfall with playing it on a nylon classical is that the neck is wider, so your first finger has to really lay. For people with smaller hands, it might serve as a problem. If you have an electric guitar at home, if you have an acoustic guitar at home, and you want to practice your bar chords on that, and then kind of make your way up, especially like if you have an electric guitar, start there and then work up to an acoustic, or then work up to your nylon that you have. If you have an acoustic guitar and want to work up to the nylon, I would say start smaller with lighter strings and then try to make your way up to, the nylon string guitar. If you don't have anything else but the nylon string guitar, that is also not an issue. So what you want to do, again, is you're taking this E chord with this new fingering shape, sliding it up, and then you're adding your first finger where it's laying down. You're not obviously on your fingertip. Your fingertip is not that big to cover all 6 strings. But what you are doing is laying those 6 strings down with just the first finger. So one problem with doing bars is that you're going to notice that your finger has multiple areas where there's joints. And the thing is that a lot of the times when you're doing this for the first time, some of your strings might lay in one of those joints that you have, which is going to make the sound kind of either clunky, muted, or just not sound at all. So everybody's a little bit different. You have to just kind of figure out what's going to work best for you in this situation. You've got to just kind of sit with this and find where your hand can really stay planted to execute this. If you are new to bar chords, one recommendation that I have is, and one exercise that I give a lot of my students, is the idea of just starting by building the bar chord from one string and then adding each one in individually. So what I would say to do, a great exercise to do for like maybe 5 minutes a day when you first start practicing guitar, 5 minutes at the end, and this can be something that you could have Netflix on and just kind of work on this exercise and just kind of be half tuned in to what you're doing, because it's more of like a muscle thing that you don't need to be really consciously thinking about musicality here. So what I would do is just take your first finger, and again, you're laying it on the fingerprint part, not on the fingertip. Start with first fret on the first string, your high F. Then what I would do is, once that rings out and sounds great, what you can do is then lay down and do 2 strings together. So you're creating this perfect fourth. After that sounds great, add in the third finger. Now for my finger, what's happening now is that when I add that third string in, I'm hitting the first joint. So I have to kind of tweak it a little bit with my hand. Then once those three sound great, so play it as a chord, then play it individually, add the fourth, add the fifth, and add the sixth. Now, naturally what's going to happen is that as you're doing this, if you notice my fingers are really pulling away. One thing that you want to do is that, and one thing you may not realize you're doing, and it's starting to come out great, is that you might be adding extra fingers to help you push down. If you notice, I'm using all of my fingers here to try and push down the strings. So you might think to yourself, oh man, it sounds great, but then you look and all of your other fingers are jumping on top to help push those strings down. So what you really want to do is kind of be conscious. It's going to take a lot of time. And again, this is like the idea of teaching a student how to play over the break, which we're all, you know, all of you guys, if you go into any sort of band program, are going to experience the struggle that a lot of kids have. And for every kid, it's different. And there's really no justifiable way to figure out how to do bar chords or playing over the break. Everyone's just going to have to figure it out themselves. But the one common thing between those two and any methodology that you go through is that it's just going to take time. This is not an overnight kind of thing. Again, people playing electric guitar might be able to push those strings down a little bit easier. So that concept might come quicker on electric guitar. When they transfer to an acoustic guitar or a nylon, they're going to take a step back. The strings are heavier on an acoustic guitar, the nylon string, the neck is wider. So what I would recommend doing is taking this idea, playing this, and just playing all six together and then working on this exercise for this week. If you're new to this kind of thing, this is what you're going to have to do for like 15, 20 minutes a day. Now, the idea of bar chords is creating one shape and moving it all the way up and down the neck to play literally every single chord possible. This is a lot of the times why guitar players can play scales and chords faster, because the guitar is set up in patterns, unlike a piano or, you know, clarinet or trumpet. It's a very visual thing where I can take one particular shape, move it anywhere on the guitar, and I have that concept in every single key. Whereas, you know, a trumpet player can't do a pattern to make everything happen in various, you know, various keys. So here's what happens. This is an E major shape. E major triad shape. The roots, my E's that I have on my guitar, low six string, here on the D string, which is string number 4, second fret, where my pinky is, and then also my high E string up here. Okay, so those are my 3 roots. When I slide it up, obviously that doesn't sound super great, but when I lay my finger down here, what's happening now is I'm creating the next half step up major chord. So when we're looking at our idea, like, you know, looking at the notes and stuff here, my root of my chord now is the 1st fret. 1st fret, 3rd fret of the 4th string, 1st fret of the 1st string. So that note is F. So by taking this E chord shape, sliding it up a fret, the whole thing up a fret, adding the 1st finger, what I'm creating now is an F major chord. But again, it's the E shape with a first finger capo. Now, another thing you can do, slide it up again. So now, 2nd fret of the 6th string, 4th fret of the 4th string, 2nd fret of the 1st string are F sharp or G flat. Again, the inharmonics share the same note. So now, by playing this shape with the 2nd fret bar, still making this E major shape, I now have an F sharp major or G flat major chord. At this point, if there's any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Please send me an email and we can kind of discuss this a little bit more. Now, taking the other 3 E shapes that you have, and I'll kind of pull up this document one more time just so you guys can see. If you take the E7 shape located here, the E minor shape or the E minor 7, the same concept happens. You're playing this chord, and as you slide it up and down on the fretboard, you now have various chords. So an E7 chord can turn into an F7. An E minor chord can turn into an F minor. An E minor 7 can turn into an F minor 7. On this sheet, you have the fretboard, again, if you need something. But again, if you know the notes chromatically, the very next note of each, each note, excuse me, the next note is always going to be the next note in the chromatic scale. If you notice here, you have 5th fret is A, 7th fret is B, your 12th fret, if you get that high, is also going to be E. So everything kind of fills in. The document I gave you with all of the notes on the guitar as well, that should also help you out. So if I am taking a look here at the minor shape, the E minor shape, again, changing the fingering, I'm now using 3 and 4. If I bring it up, again, it doesn't sound so great, but I lay that first finger down. I now have not an E minor chord by sliding it up a half step with my first finger on the 1st fret. I have F minor. If you're doing bar chords for the first time, one concept, one kind of issue, one thing you might run into is you accidentally might slide your finger up. And so you don't have that fret in between that you're supposed to. E minor chords are going to be really difficult. The minor 7 chords are going to be really difficult at first because you're really, like with your major chord, you have 3 fingers that are covering up 3 out of the 6 notes that the bar has to worry about. So you're able to get away with like most of the notes sounding out. When you start to remove them, your E minor, and then your minor 7, and you're down to you're down to 1 finger, and then the other 5 need to be a bar. Those chords are going to take a little bit longer of a time to kind of work on. For this week, what I would recommend doing is just kind of seeing if you can put these exercises together. Take an E chord, slide it up, put the first finger down. Take an E minor chord, slide it up, put the first finger down. Take an E7 chord, slide it up, put the first finger down. In your minor 7, slide it up, put your first finger down. One other thing that might help you that I've kind of taught students in the past is, instead of doing it on the 1st fret, you can also move up higher on the neck. If you notice, obviously the frets get smaller as you get closer to the body of the guitar and get wider as you go to the neck and the headstock of the guitar. So one thing that I might recommend, especially if you have like an electric or an acoustic, what you can do is just practice them higher up. So I've always told people that, especially if they have small hands, to start somewhere on like 7th fret, which would be, again, 7th fret of your low E string is a B. So if I'm playing the E major shape with the bar at the 7th fret, it's a B major chord. I would recommend maybe starting there and then just kind of naturally bringing yourself down that way, if that works for you. So again, throughout this video, there's been a few ways of teaching, and there's 12 of you in the class. Not everyone's going to do it the same way. Very much like when you're teaching someone how to play over the break, there are certain concepts that you want to really tell them, techniques that you really need to talk about, but every kid is going to get to the same same goal, the same destination in a slightly different way, slightly different path. And that's what we're here to do, is just kind of give you ways to explain the same concept a few times and let which ones are really going to stick to the student. If you have any questions with this concept, please let me know in the comments below. Please shoot me an email, and I would be happy to get together with you during office hours to kind of work on this one-on-one. This is a concept that we're going to really kind of hark on for the rest of the month prior to getting into the final. So anything that you guys need, please let me know. Let me know how this video turned out. Again, I'm trying to, I'm new to this kind of thing, so all of these different extra videos, cameras that I can add, I'm here to kind of make it the best for you guys. With that in mind, have a great week, and I will catch you guys on Monday.